Elon Musk is calling it the biggest journalism scam of recent history. Another Twitter files has dropped, and it's nothing less than an absolute bombshell. We're going to take a look at the latest revelations of deception coming from permanent Washington and the legacy media, and we're going to see precisely why both of them have become the biggest losers of them all. You are not going to want to miss this. In 2017, a group of hawkish Democrats and neocon Republicans got together and formed an organization called the Alliance for Securing Democracy, a well-funded national security advocacy group that was virulently anti-Russia and, as it turns out, anti-Trump. The alliance is, in the words of independent journalist Glenn Greenwald, the ultimate union of mainstream Democratic foreign policy officials and the world's most militant and militaristic neocons. Now, we have to remember that after the nomination and then the successful election of Donald Trump, neocons largely felt purged from the Republican Party. Of course, McCain and Graham and Rubio, they all stayed. But the diehards, the Bill Kristols of the party, they increasingly aligned themselves with a more hawkish wing of the Democratic Party. And this alliance was one of the results. And so when Trump won, they took to building institutions and infrastructures that would undermine the new MAGA-based Republican Party and eventually restore neocons to power, but now through a more militant wing of the Democratic Party. And one of those infrastructures that was built out of this was an operation called Hamilton 68, which was a dashboard that purported to track Russian bots and disinformation programs. Hamilton 68 is a reference to one of Alexander Hamilton's Federalist Papers about foreign influence. The dashboard claimed that it was a near real-time look at a list of over 600 Twitter users who actively spread Russian propaganda on Twitter. While operators of the dashboard refused to release the list, Reuters reported at the time, quote, a very high confidence that the accounts tracked by Hamilton 68 were indeed spreading Russian disinformation. As you can imagine, Hamilton 68 was very influential in helping to drive the Russian collusion conspiracy hoax throughout the time of Trump's presidency. For example, Adam Schiff, the pencil neck himself, who was a ranking member on the House Intelligence Committee at the time, hopped from one cable news outlet to the other, relentlessly pushing a theory that Russian bots were actually the ones behind calls for investigations into the FISA warrant that allowed the FBI to spy on Trump. As we now know, a fake dossier was used as evidence by FBI officials to obtain a FISA warrant, which a judge signed off on. And obviously, as that became known, more and more people wanted to know what was behind that fraud. Well, Schiff ran around claiming that everything was on the up and up. There was no fraud. And the only dynamic out there spreading doubt and skepticism regarding the dossier and the FISA warrant was coming from Russian bots and disinformation efforts. As it turns out, all of that information that Schiff was sharing on these so-called news outlets, all of it came from this dashboard, Hamilton 68. Now we know why. As of the release of the latest Twitter files from Matt Taibbi, we now know that that list was essentially bunk. Internal documents from Twitter show that based on their own investigation, Twitter employees concluded that only about 36 of the 644 accounts targeted by Hamilton 68 were physically registered in Russia. Even some of the most hardened anti-Trumpers at Twitter, like Yoel Roth, came out and said Hamilton 68 was basically a bunch of BS and that Twitter needed to call them out on it. Most all of the accounts that had been flagged had nothing to do with being Russian or bots or anything like that. And it was so interesting here because it wasn't just conservatives that were on the list. Leftists were on the list as well. In other words, all you had to do was be skeptical of the neocon narrative that Russian disinformation was behind all of our nation's woes. If you were in any way skeptical of that, either on the right or the left, either Tucker Carlson or Glenn Greenwald, you were smeared as basically a Russian agent. And the worst part is that it wasn't just Hamilton 68 spreading this Russian asset nonsense. It was the whole of the legacy media. Li Fang said it best, quote, the Hamilton 68 dashboard was a high-level scam to falsely accuse Russian influence behind everything. Their entire opaque system was a fraud, and virtually every media outlet fell for it. Everyone from New York Times to Mother Jones should post a correction. Molly Hemingway, the Federalist, recognized this actually a couple of years back. She published a piece back in 2018 that reported on how all of this Russian collusion conspiracy quackery that the legacy media was peddling virtually all came from this dashboard, Hamilton 68. But why? Why was the legacy media so prone to so much misinformation? The answer is going to shock you. First, gang, I've been teasing you all month that I have some big news to share at the end of this month. Well, here we are. This Friday at 12 Eastern, I'm sending out a special email to my email list only. I can't share it here, but I'll give you a little hint. If you're a fan of the TV show The Chosen, you're going to love this. So what could my special announcement be? Well, I'm sharing this important announcement on my newsletter this Friday at noon Eastern, and you don't want to miss it. So all you have to do is just click on that link below and sign up for my newsletter now at turleytalks.com/subscribe. You will not hear this news that's really important for our movement if you don't sign up for my email list. So make sure to click on that link below right now and subscribe. President Trump, more than any other international figure, was widely regarded as the single greatest threat to what's called the liberal international order. The liberal international order began just after the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991, when the lone superpower, the most powerful state in the world, was in fact a liberal democratic state. The United States, the sole superpower, purposely and deliberately sought to make the world in our own image. We wanted all nations to become liberal democracies, embrace liberal values, be a part of the same institutions like the WTO and the IMF, and all have the same goals. It's precisely this world that both the legacy media and the permanent political class have grown quite accustomed to. They've grown very rich and very powerful off such a world, and they were both fully committed to destroying any threat to world order that placed both of them at the top. And then, on the heels of the shocking victory of the Brexit referendum, came the one and only Donald Trump. Trump railed against the liberal international order like no one else. He promised to build a wall at the southern border and stop illegal immigration. He promised to end the global division of labor that shipped manufacturing and industry jobs overseas. He promised to withdraw from liberal institutions like the WHO and agreements like the Paris Accords. He promised to promote more European nations to exit the European Union just like Britain did. He was the single most dangerous threat to the stability of the very international liberal order that secured so much power, money, and influence that both permanent Washington and the legacy media took for granted. And thus, they both teamed up, however inadvertently or explicitly, to take Trump out. That's why even to this day, anything, literally anything that disparages Trump will be pushed as legitimate news by the legacy media, no matter how absurd. The irony in all of this is it was all too little too late. Trump did it. He helped crush the liberal international order. It's widely now recognized that that world order is effectively dead. The media went out of their way to sacrifice their integrity to try to save that order. Now, as it turns out, thanks to Trump, they have neither. As always, make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. You'll definitely want to check out my latest video on Jordan Peterson leaving Joe Rogan absolutely speechless on the World Economic Forum, the demons at Davos. You're going to love it. So make sure to click on that link, and I'll see you over there. God bless.